top of that, they are being assigned to a wide range of other conflicts, from countering Russian aggression to preparing for contingencies in Korea, Thomas said. Military leaders are making a larger effort to closely monitor the parts of our force that are under the most stress, he said, adding that the command has doubled and tripled its efforts to increase mental health awareness and provide mental health services. He declined to give specifics about the suicide rate among U.S. Special Operations Forces. I don't want to get into the morbid statistics, but we are suffering, he said. Speaking to the House Armed Services Committee on Wednesday, Thomas said the unforecasted deployment tempo was a challenge to manage, mainly because it went beyond what special operations planners had been told to expect. He said last month was particularly difficult, with 3 special operators killed in Afghanistan, a country the military had expected to leave 3 years ago. And in related stories, the Pentagon will send a proposal to the White House as early as next week, laying out America's long-term presence in Afghanistan, senior defense officials said Thursday. The plan will most likely include a request for more U.S. troops. U.S. military officials have said they need greater forces to meet the growing training and advising mission in Afghanistan, where local forces are fighting a Taliban insurgency. And there is a new push for NATO members to step up their commitments for troops and other resources to help the country in its struggle for stability. Teresa Whalen, who is working as the Pentagon's Assistant Defense Secretary for Special Operations, told senators the new plan probably will go to the White House next week. And in Baghdad, Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi is in talks with Trump administration to keep American troops in Iraq after the fight against the Islamic State in the country is concluded, said a U.S. official and an official from the Iraqi government. Both officials underlined that the discussions are ongoing, that nothing is finalized, but the talks point to a consensus by both governments that, in contrast to the U.S. withdrawal in 2011, a longer-term presence of American troops in Iraq is needed to ensure that an insurgency does not bubble up again once the militants are driven out.
From Los Angeles, U.S. immigration agents cannot effectively track foreigners who overstay their visas because of outdated technology involving numerous computer systems and a lack of screening when visitors leave the country, according to a government watchdog report released Thursday. Agents and analysts must use 10 to 40 passwords to access the computer system, said the report by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General. The inefficient computer systems plus insufficient technology training for agents hampers their ability to monitor the immigration status and whereabouts of visa holders who travel to U.S. airports, the report said. U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents have been locked out of computer systems for periods ranging from several minutes to days, and some keep their passwords written out on their desks, creating a security risk, the report said. As a result, it may take months for ICE to determine a visa holder's status and whether that person may pose a national security threat, the Inspector General's office said. Visitors are screened when they enter the U.S., but the government has been slow to develop an effective system that will keep track of them and their status when they leave, the report said. The problems can be frustrating and waste agents' time, said Claude Arnold, a former special agent in charge of ICE's Homeland Security investigations in Los Angeles. They take all the time to run a bunch of other databases to locate the person. They go and knock on doors, he said, and then they go to the last place of residence and they knock on the door and, oh, that person left the country. More than 500,000 foreigners who entered the U.S. during a one-year period ending in September 2015 overstayed their visas, the report said. The U.S. government has launched a biometric exit screening pilot program for visa holders at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport and plans to expand it to other airports in 2018. Under the pilot program, U.S. Customs and Border Protection combined traveler and airline data with images taken of passengers to confirm their departure, the report said. The biometric screening exit system was a recommendation of the Federal Commission that investigated the 2001 terror attacks. 2 of the attacks perpetrators were found to have overstayed their visas. The U.S. issued more than 10 million non-immigrant visas from October 2014 through September 2015. Visitors who overstay their visas are investigated to determine whether they have applied for immigration benefits, left the country, or pose a security risk. Homeland Security officials agreed with the report's finding.
From Washington, Congress gave final approval to a sweeping $1 trillion spending bill Thursday, sending President Donald Trump the first notable bipartisan accomplishment of his administration. The Senate voted 79-18 to pass the bill, which will keep government running for the next 5 months and ease the threat of a federal shutdown until the next spending battle in the fall. The House approved it earlier. Trump is expected to sign it swiftly into law, averting a shutdown ahead of Friday's deadline. Republicans, Senators Deb Fischer of Nebraska and Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst of Iowa voted against the measure. Nebraska GOP Ben Sasse did not vote. Trump initially groused over the final compromise because Democrats used their leverage as the minority party to deny the president his top priorities, including funding for his promised wall along the border with Mexico. But the White House later embraced the outcome. The measure will boost spending on defense, but not as much as Trump wanted, and provides money for disaster relief, medical research, and other bipartisan priorities, including the fight against opioid addiction. The sweeping 1,665-page bill also increases spending for NASA, medical research, and the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies. Democrats also praised the measures as an example of bipartisan cooperation in the handling of the 12 annual appropriations bills that fund the federal government. In related news, Donald Trump turned his first home as president into a victory lap on Thursday, celebrating House passage of legislation undoing much of his predecessor's health law. Trump received only 18% of the vote in New York in November's presidential election. Modest protests were held across the city during his visit, some visible from the presidential motorcade as it roared past Wall Street and Manhattan's famed skyscrapers. His visit was shorter than first expected so that he could commemorate the House vote with lawmakers at a Rose Garden event. Slated to be in Manhattan only a few hours, Trump was not expected to visit his home at Trump Tower and pushed back his first-time meeting with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull by several hours. And then declaring he was giving churches their voices back, President Donald Trump signed an executive order Thursday aimed at easing an IRS rule limiting political activity for religious organizations, a move that fell far short of a more sweeping order some supporters had expected. As he marked the National Day of Prayer at the White House, Trump signed the order which directs the Treasury Department to not take adverse action against churches or religious organizations for political speech. The rule has rarely been enforced. Still, opponents of the rule said the restrictions have a chilling effect on free speech. Trump has long promised that he would block the Johnson Amendment, though any repeal would have to be done by Congress. It allows a wide range of advocacy on political issues, but bars electioneering and outright political endorsements from the pulpit.
From Los Angeles, an Orange County couple says they were kicked off a Los Angeles-bound Delta flight from Hawaii last month after airline staff insisted their 2-year-old son could not sit by himself, even though the family had already paid for the seat. Brian and Brittany Shear of Huntington Beach, California, said they were removed from the flight with their 2 toddlers and had to scramble to find a hotel room. They wound up paying $2,000 for another flight home the next day, according to the report. A video of the family's April 23rd clash with airline staff was uploaded to YouTube on Wednesday. In the clip, employees of either the airline or the airport can be heard threatening the family with arrest if they don't immediately leave the cabin. "You and your wife will be in jail," a female employee said, after Brian Shear refused to exit the plane, according to the video. Staff members began arguing with the Shears because they wanted their 2-year-old son to be allowed to fly in an individual seat while fastened into a car seat, according to the video. Brian Shear told staff that the seat was originally intended for his 18-year-old son, Mason, who instead flew back to California on an earlier flight. "I paid for the seat," Brian Shear said in the video. "This is ridiculous." The employees can be heard telling Scheer that both Delta's guidelines and Federal Aviation Administration rules stipulate that a 2-year-old child must fly while seated on a parent's lap. But rules posted on each agency's website appear to contradict that.
In news briefs, from New York, Mexican drug lord and escape artist Joaquin El Chapo Guzman needs to stay in solitary confinement at a New York City lockup to keep him from trying to control his drug trafficking empire from behind bars, a judge ruled Thursday. U.S. District Judge Brian Cogan rejected a request by Guzman's defense team to order him released from an ultra-high security wing of a jail in Lower Manhattan and be allowed in general inmate population and to receive visitors. The judge agreed to let Guzman communicate with his wife, but only through letters screened by federal agents. Guzman, 59, was brought to the United States in January. He was scheduled for a court appearance today. From Los Angeles, U.S. immigration agents waste their time logging in and out of an archaic computer system while trying to track down foreigners suspected of overstaying their visas, only to find out later that many visa holders have left the country, said a government watchdog report released Thursday. Agents and analysts must use 10 to 40 passwords to access the computer systems, and 40% of the cases investigated 1 year turned out not to be overstays, said the report by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Office Inspector General. Some agents wrote passwords on their desks. People who overstay their visas must become the main source of illegal. People who overstay their visas have become the main source of illegal immigration in the U.S. in recent years.
At 20 minutes past the hour, we'll turn to local and regional news. CHI Health is undergoing some major changes in Lincoln. Both Kim Moore, president of CHI Health St. Elizabeth, and Kent Reckaway, president of the Physician Network, are retiring. Reckaway's last day is Friday, while Moore's last day will be July 31st. Together, the two have more than 7 decades of experience in the Lincoln medical community. Moore has worked at St. Elizabeth since 1979, when she started as a staff nurse in the critical care department. She worked her way up the nursing ranks, eventually becoming chief nursing officer, then chief operating officer, before being named president in 2011. Mine is a kind of rags to riches story, she said. Moore is taking an early retirement buyout, something that recently was offered to employees of the hospital age 55 or older with a certain number of years of service. The departures of Moore and Reckaway come as CHI Health and its umbrella organization, Catholic Health Initiatives, struggle with a changing healthcare landscape. CHI lost more than $75 million in its most recent quarter, and that comes on the heels of a $483 million loss in its 2016 fiscal year. As a result, the company has been cutting costs. Moore said that she wasn't necessarily looking to retire, but with the retirement of Reckaway, it made sense. In addition to leading the Physician Network, a network of more than 300 healthcare providers affiliated with CHI hospitals in Lincoln, Grand Island, and Kearney, Reckaway also is the top administrator at CHI Health Heart Hospital. With his retirement, CHI Health plans to combine leadership of St. Elizabeth and the Heart Hospital into one position. Combining the two positions into one is absolutely the right thing to do, Moore said. And she said she felt it was also the right thing to do for her to step down and let CHI choose a new person for the role. The CHI Health spokesman said the company will conduct national searches for both president jobs, one for the St. Elizabeth and Heart Hospital job, and one for the Physician Network. Barry Hoover, Chief Medical Officer for the Physician Network, will serve as interim president until someone is hired permanently for that job. Moore said the St. Elizabeth board is likely to name an interim president for the hospital to take over after she leaves. Reckaway, who declined to be interviewed, spent 33 years in various roles at the Physician Network and has been president since 2014. He was excuse me. He was CEO of the Nebraska Heart Institute in Lincoln from 2011 to 2013 and served as the EMS director for Lincoln from 1999 to 2010.
From Lincoln, fourth graders are taking aim at a perpetrator that occasionally muddies their playground at Wheeler Elementary School in Omaha. This week, about 50 of them scrambled over a dirt bank adjacent to the playground, stretching tape measures and jotting figures. Their mission, devise a way to control storm runoff and protect the playground. We're thinking about doing a terrace, said student Annalise Pfeiffer. The pilot science program at Wheeler is the kind of hands-on, problem-based learning that state educators want to see in science classrooms. New draft science standards unveiled Thursday call upon students to think and act like scientists, gathering data, analyzing it, and communicating their results. We're testing this out, said Ellen Kramer, a Millard Public Schools educator who served on the writing team for the Nebraska Department of Education. We want to be ahead of the curve when the standards come out. The draft standards list what officials believe students should know and be able to do from kindergarten to high school. The Big Bang Theory, climate change, evolution, and genetically modified organisms are among the topics addressed. On these weighty topics, the standards push students to draw their own conclusions after analyzing data. For instance, the standards would prompt students to analyze global climate models to forecast the rate and scale of global or regional climate changes. The phrase climate change is not in the current standard. There's plenty of evidence that supports that climate change is happening, said Sarah Cooper, science education specialist for the Nebraska Department of Education. That's part of the beauty of this, that it's the unsettled science. We know that it's happening, but we don't necessarily know why or what's causing it. So engaging kids and digging into their evidence, they can come to conclusions about causes. Likewise, students would explore evidence supporting the Big Bang Theory for how the universe began, drawing their own conclusions. Students would learn to explain the theory based on astronomical evidence of light spectra, motion of distant galaxies, and composition of matter in the universe. Neither the draft standards nor the current ones mention intelligent design, the theory that living things and the universe were created by an intelligent being. Under the standards, students would be expected to understand the factors causing natural selection and the process for evolution of species over time, including how multiple lines of evidence contribute to the strength of scientific theories of natural selection and evolution. In the current standards, students do explore biological evolution as a theory. Genetically modified organisms would be new to the standards. Students would learn why structural changes to genes may result in harmful, beneficial, or neutral effects to organisms. The standards borrow from the next generation science standards. Those standards were developed by the National Research Council with states and other partners, including the National Science Teacher Association and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. As of last year, 18 states and the District of Columbia had adopted the next generation science standards. Iowa adopted a modified version. Corey Epler, Chief Academic Officer in the Nebraska Department of Education, said the writing team of about 50 educators drew from a variety of sources. I think at the end of the day, we've got a set of standards written by Nebraska educators for Nebraska students, he said. Kramer, who facilitates K-5 curriculum and instruction in the Millard Public Schools, said the standards would advance science education beyond the current standards. We're going from knowing about to figuring out, she said. If adopted by the State Board of Education next fall, the standards would displace standards adopted in 2010. School districts must, within a year, adopt state standards or their own standards of equal or greater rigor. The current elementary standards were a step in the right direction, Kramer said. The approach to learning went from reading about science to doing science, she said. But the current standards still reflect a more passive approach to learning, asking kids to identify, recognize, or describe, she said. We're raising the bar. We're making it more active learning process for the kids, she said. Kids will gather the information and teachers will facilitate rather than recite facts. The idea is to make the kids self-directed learners rather than teachers pouring all the knowledge into their heads, she said. At Wheeler, the driving question in the playground project is what can students do to eliminate the negative effects of stormwater, how to slow the water, get it to settle and to spread out, she said. The fourth graders are prompted to think even more broadly about the problem. For instance, how the problem and solution would affect plants and animals, she said. Involving the playground hits home for kids. When it rains or snows, there are times when it gets so muddy and they can't get out there and play, she said. So it is a relevant issue for them. Officials said that the standards reflect the content, knowledge, and skills needed for success in college and in the workforce. Under the standards, kindergartners would have to learn fewer standards than older students. Some examples would be to develop an understanding of weather variations and patterns and where animals live and why. One standard says kindergartners will make observations to determine the effect of sunlight on Earth's surface. High school standards cover much more. They would study forces and interactions, waves and electromagnetic radiation, structure and properties of matter, DNA, cells, heredity, biological evolution, space systems, weather and climate, Earth history, and sustainability. The standards give Nebraska specific examples to make the concepts relevant for kids. For instance, the standards point to eastern and western coyote hybrids when discussing the variation and distribution of traits in a population. The standards note that lessons on radioactive dating and evolution could make use of Nebraska sites such as Ashfall Fossil Beds, Agate Fossil National Monument, and Hudson-Meng Bison Bone Bed. The draft of standards can be viewed at www.education.ne.gov. The board expects to add a link from the website to a survey for people to comment. Adoption by the State Board of Education is anticipated in September.
The national office of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Tri Delta sorority terminated nearly 1 in 5 of its members following a review because of serious concerns for the safety and well-being of members. UNL officials said they contacted the sorority's national office in February because of their concerns. After the chapter's annual semi-formal crave in February, one student was taken to the hospital for an alcohol-related illness, according to an incident report from University Police. A small team from the national office visited Lincoln in March to conduct personal hour-long meetings with each member. Several members said the team asked questions about the sorority's culture, social events, and what changes members think need to occur. The national office placed the sorority on probation, which will begin during the upcoming fall semester. It was on probation during the fall 2016 semester due to allegations of members under age 21 consuming alcohol on bid day, the day incoming members are invited to sororities. Shortly after interviews with the national office team, members were told they could be terminated. However, the large number of terminated members was not what they expected. Tri Delta's Lincoln chapter didn't respond to the Journal Star. The national office confirmed the terminations but declined to release a statement. UNL sophomore Caitlin Posh of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, was terminated from Tri Delta and said she was surprised because during her interview, she was told she exemplified the sorority's core values. Posh and several of the other members appealed and wrote letters to the national office detailing why they wished to remain part of the organization. She received a voicemail finalizing her termination on April 21. The biggest stressor for Posh and freshman Alexis Mays, a Lincoln native, is making new plans for this fall semester since both women plan to live in the Tri Delta house. Now I have nowhere to live, Pash said. That's more stressful than finals even. Pash is leaving Lincoln for the summer and may have to return to find housing. Mace is concerned about reconfiguring a budget that includes rent, utilities, and food, which would have all been included in the price members pay to live in the sorority. Members said the brief responses they received about why they were terminated from the national office were confusing. Posh was told she is unaccountable and didn't seem to want the house to change. The women also worried that they were judged unfairly because they admitted to riding on a party bus before the February semi-formal. The national office said the 4 buses were not a formal part of the event, which was the biggest concern.
Ann Ashford likely will run for Congress in 2018, but Brad and Ann Ashford have not decided which one. Brad Ashford, who held that 2nd congressional district seat for one term, 2014 to 2016, said Thursday that he has been considering seriously about a week whether to challenge Representative Don Bacon. Bacon, a Republican, defeated Ashford, a Democrat, last year in one of the country's closest races. And Furlick Ashford previously had said she was considering a bid for office, but she said Thursday she would step aside if her husband decided to vie for the seat because he would be a more qualified candidate. I just want Bacon out of there, she said. Scott Peterson, a spokesman for Bacon's political efforts, suggested that voters had recently considered and rejects the Ashfords, while Don Bacon works tirelessly to improve military readiness, eliminate burdensome regulations on small businesses, and reduce taxes for middle-class families. The Democrats continue to embrace the failed candidate of the past, Peterson wrote in an email. In 2012, Ann Ashford lost the Nebraska regent race, and nearly 6 months ago, Brad Ashford was fired by the voters. Regardless of which Ashford decides to run, either will be another rubber stamp for Nancy Pelosi and her failed policies. Brad Ashford said he was unhappy with Bacon's vote Thursday to jettison the Affordable Care Act. He issued a press release that said the answer for health care has always been a bipartisan solution. Today, we have gone to the opposite direction. Nebraskans and all Americans will be ill-served by Congressman Bacon's vote. Both Ashfords said they will announce their decision after Tuesday's Omaha mayoral election. Ann Ashford said, we want all attention to go to Heath Mello, who is challenging Mayor Gene Stothert. Ann Ashford is a lifelong Omahan and until recently a lifelong Republican. Brad Ashford was a longtime member of the state legislature and has been registered as a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent. Brad Ashford previously had been focused on his role as executive director of Midtown 2050, a new nonprofit advocating for development in Midtown. But he resigned from that post after board members raised concerns about him campaigning for Heath Mello.
And we'll turn to budget news. The legislature's Appropriations Committee Chairman, John Steiner, had predicted it would be a slugfest. It was. During debate on the 2017-19 budget Thursday, the University of Nebraska got caught in the fight about whether the Appropriations Committee had cut spending enough. Senators took their time over 2 days to give second-round approval to 7 budget-related bills. The discussions in those hours ranged from property tax cuts to University of Nebraska's salaries to funding for women's health services at standalone clinics, including Planned Parenthood. Part of the discord Thursday surrounding the $8.9 billion budget was whether to cut the budget or make up part of a $55 million revenue decline by lowering the minimum reserve from 3% to 2.5%. Lowering the reserve would represent $42 million. Steiner told senators the committee made nearly $10.8 million in cuts, and he didn't want to take additional money out of the rainy day fund. Some dissenting senators wanted more cuts to the budget to fill the gap. We had a $1.1 billion deficit that we had to solve, Steiner told senators. How do we solve it? Part of the solution was $700 million in cuts overall before the Economic Forecasting Board met a week ago and said the additional $55 million was needed. So we solved it, he said of the original cuts. And I was only given half a toolbox. I didn't have any revenue to do this with, he said. The legislature still needs to take a look at the millions of dollars in tax cuts and tax exemptions, he said, that could solve the shortfalls. Senator Dan Hughes of Venango said the state doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. The growth in spending is too much for a small population state. Lincoln Senator Kate Bowles said if senators are looking for further cuts, there are cuts to be made. But the Appropriations Committee has protected the priorities of the legislature as a whole. So if you're looking for further cuts will hurt all of us, Bowles said.
It appears unlikely that online retailers will have to start collecting Nebraska's sales tax this year. A surprising alliance between Governor Pete Ricketts and State Senator Ernie Chambers of Omaha helped to stall a bill in the Nebraska legislature intended to require internet businesses to either collect state sales tax or report individual sales to regulators. The bill's sponsor said he lacked the votes needed to clear a filibuster. Although Legislative Bill 44 technically remains alive, Senator Dan Watermeyer said his priority legislation probably won't come back for a vote during the final 3 weeks of the session. I'd say there's a pretty good chance it will have to wait until next year, he said. The bill advanced from first round debate on a vote of 28-13, but when it came up for second round consideration Thursday, Chambers filed a hostile amendment and declared he was filibustering the measure. Legislative rules require the support of 33 of the 49 senators to stop a filibuster and allow a vote to decide if a bill advances. Watermeyer said the bill was hurt because 6 senators who had excused absences Thursday night told him they supported his measure. Without their presence, Watermeyer decided not to risk losing a filibuster vote. The bill had strong support from Main Street businesses in Nebraska who have long considered it unfair that they must pay state sales tax while online merchants do not. State law requires taxpayers to report their online purchases on their state income tax returns, but few do. Watermeyer estimated that his bill could have generated $30 million or more in additional sales tax revenue at a time when the state is struggling to balance the budget. Senator John McAllister, who introduced a similar bill this year, said it's not a new tax because the money is owed to the state under existing law. It's just foolhardy for us to miss the opportunity to collect that money, McAllister said. Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue said she has discussed the internet sales tax with several thousands of her constituents during her campaign last year and in regular phone surveys this year. Not a single person, not one, told me it was a bad idea, she said. They all supported it. But the bill faced opposition early on from the governor, who threatened to veto it if it passed. Ricketts rarely finds himself on the same side of an issue as Chambers, one of the governor's most persistent critics. The bill also was called unconstitutional in an opinion from Attorney General Doug Peterson. Watermeyer offered an amendment to address the constitutional issues. It would have given remote retailers a choice, either remit the tax or report who has made purchases from Nebraska. In addition, the amendment said the requirements would have applied only to retailers that did at least $100,000 in sales or 200 individual transactions in the state. Retailers that refused to comply would face fines under the amendment. Watermeyer said his bill was based on an approach used in Colorado that's been upheld in the courts. But Chambers said it would have been prohibitively expensive for Nebraska to try to enforce the requirements and collect fines from retailers based elsewhere. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of, and Colorado did it because they've got a dumb legislator in their they've got dumb legislatures in their legislature. He said, at least 28 states have introduced bills to ensure collection of the state sales tax on internet sales to level the playing field and to increase tax revenue. In December, Amazon agreed to voluntarily remit Nebraska's state sales taxes, but many online retailers still don't.
A man was pulled out of a grain bin in Raymond Thursday afternoon after being stuck for about 2 hours. Raymond Fire and Rescue Assistant Chief Nick Monier said the man in his 50s was stuck below his waist and his injuries weren't life-threatening. The Lancaster County Sheriff's Office and fire departments from Raymond, Malcolm, Valparaiso, Ceresco, and Lincoln assisted the man at Farmers Cooperative, 14540 Union Pacific Railroad. The co-op moved grain from one bin to another when the auger got plugged, Monier said. While unplugging it, the grain began moving again, trapping the man. One co-op member was able to help the man free one leg before crews arrived, but grain continued to fall. Shutting off the auger helped tremendously, Monier said. We were lucky enough that someone was there with him. The center of the bin was down about 5 to 6 feet, but sides were about 20 feet high with grain, Monier said. 3 holes were cut on one side of the bin to get grain out. The man had been stuck in the bin since about 11:15 a.m., LSO said. Lincoln Fire and Rescue's technical unit, a helicopter, and a K2 construction vacuum truck also assisted.
In other metro area news briefs, the Ralston Police Department has a new top cop. Mark Leonardo was named police chief on Thursday. He takes over for Ron Murtaugh, who resigned in January to start a new position as judicial administrator for Douglas County Court. Leonardo, who has been with the department for 25 years, was deputy chief until he became interim chief upon Murtaugh's departure. After being tapped for the department's top job, Leonardo said he was honored, overwhelmed, and couldn't wait to lead the department. His next steps will be finding a deputy chief and working with the city during the next budget process. 4 new fire trucks worth about $2 million will go into service in Omaha next week. 2 trucks will be assigned to North Omaha, 1 to downtown, and 1 to South Omaha. The purchase is part of an overall upgrade in firefighting equipment, according to Mayor Gene Stothart's office. 3 other new fire trucks were brought into service last year. 8 new Chevrolet Tahoe sport utility vehicles have been purchased at a cost of $288,000 for battalion chiefs. Additionally, the city is getting 4 new ambulances in 2018 and is purchasing new portable radios with grant money. From Des Moines, a jury on Thursday awarded more than $1.4 million to a former University of Iowa athletic administrator, ruling that the university had discriminated against her because of her gender and sexual orientation. Jane Meyer alleged that she suffered workplace discrimination as a gay woman in a relationship with the school's longtime, highly successful field hockey coach. Tracy Griesbaum, that the school retaliated against her for complaining about the firing of Griesbaum and that she was paid less than a male counterpart for similar work. Judge Michael D. Huppert said the 8-person jury found in favor of Meyer on all 5 counts. The trial lasted nearly 3 weeks and featured testimony from Iowa football coach Kirk Ferentz and wrestling coach Tim Brands. The jury began deliberating Wednesday, and it delivered its sealed verdict on Thursday. Meyer, who was Iowa's top assistant and the top-ranking female athletics administrator for a decade, filed the lawsuit after being transferred to another department soon after Griesbaum was fired. Meyer's job was eliminated in 2016.
It is now time to turn to the obituaries in each of our papers. The obituaries today are brought to you by SEI Medical Alert. Medical alert monitoring 24/7, 365 at the push of a button. SEI, your local medical alert provider. Call 402-333-3233 or visit seimedicalalert.com for more information. These are obituaries from the Lincoln Journal-Star for Friday, May 5. Domingo Flossie. Domingo was 96 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials are suggested to the Alzheimer's Association of the Great Plains in Lincoln, the Cancer Resource Center in Lincoln, or the Donor's Choice. The Hammonds Family Funeral Service is handling arrangements. Luann Eisenhower was 84 and lived in Lincoln. She died on May 1st. Memorial services will be held on Saturday at 11 a.m. at Luther Memorial Lutheran Church in Syracuse. Memorials to the Capital Humane Society, the Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse. Engel, Marguerite I. Engel, was 91 and lived in Wilbur, where she died on May 2nd. Ermel Marie Fletcher was 101 and lived in Nebraska City, where she died on May 2nd. The Hammonds Family Funeral Chapel in Weeping Water is handling services. Memorials are suggested to the Avoca Cemetery or the Donor's Choice. Foltz, O. Orlin Dale Foltz, was a veteran who died at the age of 94 years young on January 31st. He served as a member of the U.S. Army Air Corps, now the Air Force, during World War II as a bombardier navigator. Celebration of Life ceremony will be held today at 11 a.m. at the Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church. Donations may be made to the Sesostris Shrine Transportation Fund or Shriners Hospital for Children, the Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Damon Paul E. Damon was 76 and lived in Seward. He was a veteran serving in the U.S. Army Reserves. Memorial services will be held at 11 a.m. Monday, May 8 at St. John Lutheran Church in Seward. Memorials to St. John's Lutheran Church Foundation or the donor's choice. Phyllis Fulmer was 64 when she died in Lincoln on April 22nd. Services will be held at 2 p.m. Saturday, May 6th at Southwood Lutheran Church. Goodson, Ronald H. Goodson, was 72 and lived in Beatrice, where he died on May 2nd. Kennedy, Mary J. Kennedy, was 78 and lived in Grand Island. The Kunkel Funeral Home in Crete is handling services. Celebration of Life will be 11 a.m. Monday, May 8 at First Faith United Methodist Church in Grand Island. Marie Cusera, was 90 and lived in Valparaiso, where she died on April 30. Memorials to St. Vitus Catholic Church or the Valparaiso Senior Center. The Marcy Svoboda Mortuary is handling services. McBride, Carol or Mac McBride, was 72 and lived in Lincoln, where he died on November 10 of 2016. Graveside services with military honors will be held at 11 a.m. Saturday, May 6 at the Bartlett Cemetery in Bartlett. Miller, Norma M. Miller, was 93 and lived in Lincoln, where she died on April 30. Funeral services are handled by Roper and Sons. Memorial contributions may be made to the family for future designation. Olson, Roger K. Olson, was 75 and lived in Omaha, formerly in Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to the family. The Reichmuth Funeral Home in Elkhorn is handling arrangements. Pierce, Cindy Marie Pierce, was 52 and lived in Crete, where she died on April 29. Shearman, Dale L. Shearman, was 88 and lived in Lincoln. He died there on May 4. Smith, Cameron J. Smith, was 44 and lived in Lincoln. He died there on May 4. Mary Jane Spear, was 78 and lived in Auburn. She died on April 29. The Hemmingson Funeral Home in Auburn is handling arrangements. Memorials to Trinity Lutheran Church, the Auburn Rescue Squad, Auburn Volunteer Fire Department, or Nemaha County Hospital. Stanislav, Carolyn A. Stanislav, was 67 and lived in Prague. Memorials to the Pink Bandana Incorporated or Prague Volunteer Fire Department. Live plants preferred over cut flowers. The Marcy Svoboda Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Stewart, LaDonna or Donna Stewart, was 83 and lived in Panama. A service in June is pending. The Roper and Sons Funeral Home. Tipton, Thomas Tipton, was 71 when he died in Lincoln on May 1st. A celebration of life will be held 11 a.m. Saturday, May 20 at First Lutheran Church in Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to Friends of the Woods or Tom Tipton Memorial at Woods Tennis Center in Lincoln. No funeral home is mentioned. Tonkin, Lucille June Tonkin, was 103 years old, and she died on April 27 in the Lincoln area, it appears. Memorial services are handled by the Roper and Sons Funeral Home. Please direct memorials to Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, JDRF, or the Lincoln Area Youth for Christ, in care of the family. Tavares Andrea A. Taveras was 74 when death occurred on April 27. And my final notice is for Vance Thomas L. Vance. He was 72 when he died on May 3.
And from the Omaha World Herald, Baldwin, Carolyn B. Baldwin, age 66. Bethany Funeral Home on 82nd and Harrison is handling the arrangements. Bean, Flossie M. Bean, age 72. Good Shepherd Funeral Home on South 24th Street. Billman, Lawrence Larry Billman, age 62 of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Scroke Funeral Chapel in Flandreau, South Dakota is handling the arrangements. Caniglia, Alfred J. Caniglia Sr., age 88. There will be a complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel on Center Street. Dacus Judson W. Dacus III, J.W., age 66. Thomas Funeral Home on North 24th Street. Daly, Margaret J. Daly, age 98. There will be a complete notice later. Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home on F Street. Fathery, Jacqueline Fathery, age 87, maiden name Whitlin. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Library, Homebound Department, Raider Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel. Furman, Richard Dick Furman, age 91, a veteran of the U.S. Navy. In lieu of flowers, please direct memorials to St. Pius X Catholic Church in Omaha, Brahmin Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Ficenic, I believe that's how it's pronounced. That's F-I-C-E-N-E-C, Edward A. Ficenic Sr., age 88, retired captain of the Omaha Fire Department. Memorials to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Gibbs, Maxine H. Gibbs, age 94, of Council Bluffs. The family will direct memorials. Cutler, O'Neill, Meyer Woodring, Bayless Park Chapel. Glassman, Marguerite G. Glassman, maiden name Brandt, age 85. Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Grau, Herbert E. Grau, age 87. There is no funeral home listed. There's no information regarding a service listed. Hoffman, James Jim Hoffman, age 72. Fouts Funeral Home in Dunlap, Iowa is handling the arrangements. Earlbeck, Cletus H. Earlbeck, age 81, a veteran. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Hospice House, Creighton University, or St. Joan of Arc Church. Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Johnson, Patricia H. Johnson, age 70, West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home on Center Street. Murphy, Honorable James N. Murphy, age 88, a veteran. There will be military honors at the funeral. Memorials to the Sacred Heart Catholic Church, Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Norris, Roy B. Norris, age 99, of Delta, Colorado, a veteran of the United States Army during World War II. Services will be held at a later date in Omaha, Nebraska. Taylor Funeral Service and Crematory in Delta, Colorado is handling the arrangements. Olson, Roger K. Olson, age 75, in lieu of flowers. Memorials to the family. Reichmuth Funeral Home on West Maple is handling the arrangements. Peterson, Kitty Peterson, a veteran, age 70 years old. Memorials to Nebraska Kidney Foundation. Heafy Hoffman DeVort Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Pleiss, Marcel Pleiss, age 83, maiden name Hortland, of Marco Island, Florida. She has chosen not to have a funeral or memorial service and instead wishes her ashes to be spread by her family in a private ceremony. There is no funeral home listed. Poulos, J.T. Poulos, age 91, of Council Bluffs, a veteran of the U.S. Army during World War II. Memorials directed to St. John's Greek Orthodox Church Renovation Fund, Cutler, O'Neill, Meyer Woodring, Bayless Park Chapel in Council Bluffs. Richard, Norma Josephine Richard, age 92. That's spelled R-I-C-H-A-R-T. Service will be held at 10:30 a.m. at the Nebraska Masonic Home, 1300 Avenue D, Plattsmouth, Nebraska. Memorials to the Nebraska Masonic Home of Plattsmouth or Ridgewood Retirement Community, Bennington, Nebraska. There is no funeral home listed. Ring, Catherine Mary Ring, maiden name Noonan, age 87. Keefe Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Rosario, Joan K. Rosario, age 75. There will be a complete notice later. Carisco Larkin Stathwitz Funeral Home on F Street. Rosmarin, Francis J. Rosmarin, age 90, a veteran. In lieu of flowers, memorials to St. Thomas More Educational Fund. Heafy Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Schaefer Inks, Sarah Sidonia, Schaefer Inks, age 22. Memorials will be directed by the family in care of Bellevue Memorial Chapel. Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Heafy Hoffman, DeWart Cutler is handling the arrangements. Schwartz, Solomon Schwartz, age 91. Memorials to Rose Blumkin Jewish Home or Buffett Cancer Center. Jewish Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Seba, Dale Harold Seba, age 66. There will be a complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Vance, Bonnie M. Vance, age 84. Bethany Funeral Home on 82nd and Harrison is handling the arrangements. Versh, Paul J. Versh, age 92. There will be a complete notice later. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory on 72nd Street. And my final listing is Yerkes or Yerkes, Y-E-R-K-E-S, John H. Yerkes, age 71. Memorials to Underwood Hills Presbyterian Church. Heafy Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel is handling the arrangements. Listeners, memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in helping keep Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. And Ralph and I will be right back after a brief break with editorials, today's living and entertainment, business markets, and sports.
We're hitting this right on the button.
What?
11 o'clock.
Oh,
Perfect time.
yeah, we nailed it. I reading Bacon's comments. I swear the guy didn't even read it. It's like he called up whoever it is that's pulling the little wires and said, "How do I vote on this?" You vote. No.
You're a freshman. You need to support the party.
The party.
I have gotten emails from him saying, gee, we need to do something about Obamacare because premiums are going up too fast and, deductibles are too high. All of this will only make it worse. In a telephone town hall that I was on with him in late January or early February, he promised he would never vote for a bill that hadn't been scored by CBO. This one has not. It's, not a single hearing held on this bill in the House, not a single hearing.
It's just this vindictive thing that Trump has on dismantling everything Obama did. I'm coming to that conclusion. Anything that has Obama's name on it, either Obama, he has this vindictive thing on destroying it. And I don't know how I suspect that this thing he just signed with the allowing the churches to thing he just signed allowing the churches to I get that. I bet that's going to get challenged by the ACLU and other organizations.
ACLU said they were ready to challenge it, but it's worthless. They said, we don't have anything to argue with because it's not going to do anything.
Oh, really? So it's just another one of his.
Yeah. See what I can sign?
I think I shared it on that fake president about the fact of all the executive orders he signed, and in the video of him complaining about the number of executive orders. The one good thing about this mayoral election right now is all the stuff that's getting done. The roads they're on the new fire truck.
Yep, we're spending money. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to come out.
I can't say that I think she's done a bad job, but after she had Scott Walker come here,
Yes,
I'm like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, that's kind of my reaction as well. I think she's probably been, at least an average mayor.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back, listeners. We'll start our second half with the editorials and opinion articles from our respective papers and from the Omaha World Herald. Vietnam Honor Flight, thanks to all for service. The Vietnam War years were times of stress and tumult for our country. While the conflict sharply divided the public thousands of miles away, our military service personnel on land, on sea, and in air were staring a brutal war directly in the face. At the peak in 1968, U.S. troop numbers in South Vietnam totaled some 536,000. Battles large and small punctuated the years of American military involvement from 1965 to 1973. The intense fighting in the Ia Drang Valley in 1965, the first heavy combat involving U.S. forces, the months-long North Vietnamese barrage and siege of the U.S. base at Khe Son in Quang Tri Province, the fierce combat at Hue and Hamburger Hill, and the battling at countless other sites. All the while, U.S. pilots of helicopters, jets, or bombers faced danger from hostile fire. By the time U.S. forces withdrew in 1973, the death toll for our troops exceeded 58,000. For those who survived and remained and returned stateside, the welcome often was subdued or minimal. For some, unfortunately, it was hostile. So what a welcome night it was this week when 654 Vietnam veterans flew from Nebraska to Washington, D.C. through flights organized by Bill and Yvonne Williams, which were covered by $600,000 in donations. At the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the World Herald Joseph Morton reported, the veterans traced the names on the wall and wiped away tears. Patrick Stanoshek, a 67-year-old Vietnam veteran from Lincoln, left his own dog tags and the combat boots he wore in Vietnam in front of the wall to honor his brother Michael, who also served in Vietnam and who died last year at age 67 as a result of his exposure to Agent Orange. The Williamsons indicate that this will likely be the final honor flight under their sponsorship. It's an appropriate occasion to note their laudable vision and civic mindedness in helping so many veterans of World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War make these trips to our nation's capital. The meaningfulness of those flights was shown above all in the welcomes the veterans received first in Washington and then upon returning home. For the veterans of Vietnam, it was the welcome they richly deserved for enduring the brutality of war in service to our country and to freedom.
And these are letters to the editor in the Lincoln Journal-Star. Former state senator Tom Carlson of Holdridge writes, over the past 4 years, I've listened to Governor Pete Ricketts talk about the importance of crop and livestock production, which makes up our #1 industry in Nebraska and is responsible for 1 in every 3 jobs in the state. I've appreciated the governor's continued commitment to achieving water sustainability over the next several years, which will place Nebraska in the best position to feed the citizens of Nebraska, as well as a significant percentage of the people of the world. I believe this is a noble mission, second only to the mission of the church. I'm confident that any suggestion to cut the funding for reaching water sustainability would not come from Governor Ricketts. He has stated publicly his commitment to accomplishing water sustainability and keeping agriculture our most important industry. I believe he also understands the importance of education. That commitment will help keep the University of Nebraska moving forward to provide the necessary leadership throughout the world to help agriculture produce more with less water. It is the key to world survival, and it is a vital ingredient for future economic progress in our state. Our success in years to come depends on a strong agricultural sector along with a sustainable water plan to assure profitability, which gives all of us a better life and a future that is financially secure. If your state senator is concerned about the reality of an adequate food supply for future years, ask him or her to vote against a cut to the Water Sustainability Fund and against a further cut in funding for the University of Nebraska. We all understand that the revenue shortfall we face today is a result of low commodity prices in agriculture. We must support agriculture as well as UNL's Institute for Agriculture and Natural Resources. John Butcher of Lincoln writes, I believe that I can speak for most, if not all, of the Vietnam veterans who participated in the recent honor flight to Washington, D.C., in saying that we are extremely grateful to every one of the wonderful people who were at the Lincoln Airport to welcome us home. You helped restore much of our tarnished sense of peace and pride lost 40 to 50 years ago as we returned to a nation, much of whose response ranged from indifference to hostility. I cannot overstate how much every one of you meant to us. I thank you with deepest gratitude. It brought me and many of my fellow vets to tears. It is you who are the true and finest American patriots.
From the Omaha Public Pulse, a letter from Tom Kenny, Omaha, writes, I want to thank Omaha Mayor candidate Heath Mello for running a strong, clean campaign, for working progressively for change and improvements in the daily lives of Omahans. His campaign has been positive, focusing on how to improve the lives of all Omaha citizens to bridge differences in opinion, social station, race, and gender. His campaign has sought to unite Omahans, not divide them, to make Omaha an attractive place for new families and new businesses. In my view, as a lifelong Democrat, one value has always separated the Democrats from the Republicans: concern for the helpless in our society, from victims of discrimination to the elderly, the physically and mentally ill to new immigrants coming to our shores. Mello's concern for the unborn is admirable and consistent with those traditional and admirable values. As a Catholic Democrat, I hope he retains those values and ignores the strident and angry voices in the National Party which demand that he abandon them. Rob Roba of Omaha writes, my business associates has friends working in the trades in the Omaha Public Works Department. They tell him that under Mayor Jean Stothert, they have been given the resources they need to do their job. For instance, she's nearly doubled the repair budget from when she started. These tradespeople very much appreciate the support they enjoy now, which was not necessarily there under prior mayors, who left more than 5,000 miles of road in disrepair. Why is Stothert blamed for a 50-year backlog that clearly took more than 4 years, than the 4 years she has been in office to accumulate? Besides adding to the police force to keep our city safe, the mayor has balanced the budget and accumulated a surplus that can now be used to accelerate street repairs even more. If you like the balanced budget and improving street repair, please join me in voting for Mayor Stothert Tuesday. Tony R. Emanuel of Omaha writes, when Mayor Jean Stothert ran for office, a big part of her campaign was about repealing the restaurant tax. Well, it's about 4 years later, and we the taxpayers have yet to see a repeal or even lowering of the tax. Now she wants to put blame on the past 50 years for the chuck holes we now have. Well, I'm asking, what has street maintenance been doing all winter and spring? With no snow, every chuck hole in the city should already been patched. And the city public works department has the gall to tell residents that it will not fix the holes on some streets. We pay wheel tax and gas tax to get these holes fixed. When street maintenance gets that arrogant and the mayor doesn't keep her campaign promises, I think it's time for a new mayor. If you want more of the same, vote for Stothert. If you want your chuck holes fixed, vote for Mello. And John Berger of Omaha writes, I disagree with April 24 Public Pulse writer Gabe Allen. You should be required to provide some kind of ID to vote. Otherwise, we could have people voting many times under various names, and you have to be a citizen. Allen argues that the U.S. Constitution says nothing about needing an ID to vote. Does he think we should go back to the 1800s and not allow women or blacks to vote? Would he be okay with allowing only properly property owners to vote? Getting ID is easy, and it's needed for many things. It is not, as Alan writes, a poll tax. I had to pay for my driver's license, which is a form of ID. Should I whine about that fee? No, it's a privilege to live in this great country. And Vicki Pratt of Omaha writes, our state senators voted to restore voting rights to more than 7,000 felons who have served their sentence and been released. But Governor Pete Ricketts vetoed Legislative Bill 75 because keeping your nose clean for 2 years isn't too much to act. Pick another angle, Governor. The 2-year waiting period was set in 2005 as a compromise on the original bill that removed the lifelong voting ban for released felons. The legislature rightly voted to end this arbitrary additional punishment.
This is the Our View column written by the editorial staff of the Journal-Star. When the controversial tax reform plan pushed by Governor Pete Ricketts failed to garner enough votes this week to break a filibuster, the measure was declared dead for the year. While reductions in taxes are certainly appealing, such acts can't be done irresponsibly, particularly in light of the deficits that preceded steep spending cuts in this first year of the biennial budget. Lawmakers convened in January with Nebraska needing to trim $900 million from the state budget. Even at first glance, a plan that would increase that deficit by millions deserved skepticism. And as the session wore on, it became clear Ricketts' goals weren't compatible with the grim reality of tax revenue forecasts that fell by tens or hundreds of millions of dollars at seemingly every update. Critics often pointed to the bleak financial picture faced by Kansas after its lawmakers cut taxes too much too soon. The state dropped income tax rates so dramatically in 2012 that government revenues have fallen sharply while expenses have increased, leaving a forecast $1.1 billion shortfall by 2019. The aftermath has been messy, with a shutdown of all public schools a real possibility last summer. In response, some taxes, including Kansas's sales tax, have been raised to meet fiduciary responsibilities. Other proposed increases loom on the horizon. Nebraska doesn't need or want that mess. Instead, citizens deserve a legislature that is responsible with its finances for their sake. The passion about what's best for Nebraska's taxpayers is good. However, the bitter post-mortem that followed this measure's defeat was not. Proponents of the bill argued that a minority of the legislature voted against taxpayers' best interest in killing it, while groups like Americans for Prosperity vowed senators responsible for the legislation's demise would be held accountable. The bill's opponents, such as Senator Burke Carr of Omaha, told reporters they instead said no to a bad bill. A robust debate on the state's situation is positive, but the sniping afterward was disappointing. The legislature will likely debate a similar measure in 2018, and we hope it's accompanied by a rosier outlook on the state's finances. At that time, a more modest version of the reform sought by the governor may enter the realm of possibility. And the reason for the tax reform bill's demise this week was simple. Nebraska simply couldn't afford this legislation at this time.
In another editorial from the Omaha World Herald entitled FBI Terror Audit, Bureau Can Learn from Closed Files, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the key law enforcement agency that investigates domestic terrorism, must remain ever vigilant to prevent the next attack on American soil. Questions about the Bureau's approach followed the Orlando nightclub shooting, the Fort Lauderdale airport attack, and the New York pressure cooker bomber, after the public learned that the FBI was investigating, or had declined to investigate suspects in each of these cases. The Bureau recently made the right decision to audit the last 3 years of its terror investigations that followed public tips or agency leads. This type of self-reflection is exactly how the top law enforcement agency should act after cases expose potential flaws or mistakes. The review covers the FBI's lowest level inquiries. Law enforcement intelligence operations are among our nation's central tools to forestall domestic terror attacks. Being willing to learn from past mistakes improves security for every American. Formally, this audit is meant to make sure that correct procedures were followed and that nothing was missing. Informally, the process encourages more careful vetting and measured decisions. It's also a sobering reminder of how hard it is to identify and monitor people susceptible to radicalization as terrorists or other types of lone wolf attackers. There are few ways to stop motivated evildoers who have little to lose, and even fewer ways to spot them before they are radicalized. The FBI deserves praise for examining its own efforts to prevent terrorism.
And we'll turn to some of the lighter columns in each of our papers. This is Ask Amy, written by Amy Dickinson. Dear Amy, I live in Hawaii. We have lots of family and friends who stay at our home. Could you briefly describe the do's and don'ts while staying as a guest in someone's home? Some of our guests keep their bedrooms tidy, help clean up after meals, and or offer a dinner outing. On the other hand, we've had one or two who have broken items and failed to notify us of the damage, who have left the bedroom and bathroom filthy, and who seem to expect us to do everything for them unless I put my foot down. Vacation season begins now. I believe both hosts and visitors would greatly benefit from your advice. I'm going to frame your suggestions in the guest bedroom. Signed, Hosts with the Most. Dear hosts, I don't know if this is worthy of framing, but here's my response. Good guests bring a small token with them to present to their hosts on arrival. Good guests keep their own area clean and tidy and offer to help with meal preparation and cleanup. Good guests are independent and respectful of their host's work schedule, are enthusiastic and appreciative of their surroundings, and cook or treat their host to at least one meal during their stay. Good guests ask their host if they should strip or make the bed on the morning of their departure. Guests who want to be invited back thank their hosts in writing after their stay. Dear Amy, my husband and daughter invited my mother to come to our house for a holiday dinner. Mom announced that she was bringing her dog. She did not ask, she announced. My husband and daughter said nothing. When I heard about this, I called her and asked her to please not bring her dog to our house for dinner. I told her that because we have two dogs of our own, we would prefer that she leave hers home. She said okay. She came to dinner and stated that she did bring her dog and had left him in her car. I had many people in the house and did not want to argue over her dog being in the car, so I said nothing. When dinner was over, we went outside. I looked over and saw she had taken her dog out of the car and he was roaming the yard. Our two dogs started barking like crazy. Our two dogs are female, hers is a male. They have not seen her dog before. My mother came into the house and said she needed to take the dog home since my dogs upset him. I told her I asked her not to bring her dog, but she said, "Too bad," and drove off. There are many times that I let things roll off my back, but I cannot this time. What do you suggest I do in the future if she brings her dog? Or should I not invite her to our home again? She's a very disrespectful person on many levels, and I'm tired of putting up with it. She is 75. Thanks for letting me vent. Please help. Signed, No Other Dogs Allowed. Dear No Dogs, the kindest thing to do would be for you to see if your three dogs can meet one another and learn to eventually get along. However, I can see why you don't want to reward your mother's bad manners by caving to her. Most importantly, it's not safe for your mother's dog to be left in a car for any length of time. Her choice reveals extremely poor judgment on her part. I think you've demonstrated the fact that you're capable of putting your foot down. You should assume that your mother and her old dog can learn some new tricks. Once amnesia sets in and you issue another invitation, if your mother brings her dog, you should simply say, "Oh, I thought we were clear on this, but it looks like you've forgotten, so you should take Muffin home and maybe we can plan for another day." Dear Amy, Forgotten on the fourth floor was a hospital worker who was in for surgery. None of her coworkers visited her during her confinement. I was shocked when I had major surgery recently, and none of my coworkers even inquired about me. Other people surprised me with their kindness and generosity. Signed, Recovered. Dear Recovered, illness tends to bring out people's elemental qualities, for better or worse.
Jeff Katurba's cartoon this morning really fits more in the living section today. It's very non-political and it's very cute given the weekend. It's got two frames in it. The first frame has a husband and wife. The wife is leaning over her husband. He's sitting in his easy chair with a laptop computer in front of him, a box of candy, and a Coke sitting on the table. And his wife goes, "I'm sorry you couldn't make the Berkshire meeting this year." And he goes, "Me too, but at least I can live stream it. Plus I have my Berkey boxers, Coke, See's candy, laptop from NFM, and on and on." And then the next frame shows the wife leaning over with a little sly look on her face going, "Anything from Borsheim's?" And the man has a very I've been had look on his face. So in the Amy Lynn Thomas column, who is a frequent contributor to the mamaha.com blogger site, writes an article saying, "Live confidently in the now, be thankful later. I've had a revelation. I'm sure if I told it to Oprah, she'd say something like, 'You've watched all my shows and you've just now had this revelation.' I'm a slow learner, Oprah. Get off my back. My revelation is this: start living in the moment, in my body, here, not out there, wandering aimlessly in my thoughts, or lost in Facebook threads, or the comfortable escape of a bag of M&Ms left over from Easter. Start living in my life. So many seasoned parents have told me to enjoy every minute of motherhood because they grow up so fast. It's a cliche I can intellectually ingest as likely true, but it's hard to absorb when I'm so exhausted. I hold my eyes open with paper clips while trying to discern if the stain on my shirt is melted chocolate or someone else's poop. Especially given that so many of us work inside or outside the home and are constantly drawn to the call of our devices, living somewhere other than our lives might be the new norm. I came to this realization recently as I've tried to figure out why I'm having a difficult time losing my extra baby weight. I've been anxious to get back to my pre-baby size, but more specifically, my pre-baby clothes, and I can't seem to do it as easily as I did before. Of course, there are many good reasons for that, like being a new human being being born. But one of the main reasons dawned on me like a club in the face. In times of stress or worry or uncertainty, I try to make a quick escape. And since my kitchen is pretty close to all the action in my life, that's a go-to respite. And since stress, worry, and uncertainty is pretty much motherhood in a nutshell, I could probably define my current life as lost somewhere in my thoughts while grazing on salted cashews. I started to take note of how I feel when I find myself heading mindlessly toward the kitchen. One time I felt exhaustion when both girls weren't feeling well. Another time I felt uncertainty. My book is in my agent's hands now, and there are a lot of details for me to dabble with in the interim, including but not limited to doubt, worry, excitement, and a realization I have no idea what I'm doing. Instead of sitting with my thoughts and feelings, I've been fleeing them. Instead of living in my skin and embracing the trials and obstacles of nurturing babies and a career, I often unconsciously zip out of my skin and run off toward wandering paths of social media bunny trails. My mind and my body have muscle memory. I can accomplish a freakish amount just on reflex. But then one day I could wake up and realize my kids are in college. Where had I been that whole time? Running off isn't working. Perhaps staying, living, and breathing right here in the moment is better. It's worth a shot, right? Humans are complex and extremely adaptable. It amazes me that I can be on the floor playing with my girls while also somewhere in the distant and far away. That I can accomplish so much, yet still yearn for more. That I can be so safe, yet worry. That I can be sitting here with you, but gone. So I cling to a few truths. Everyone has doubts. The solution is confidence in your purpose and one foot in front of the other. Worry doesn't add a minute to your life, and no one knows what you're doing, and somehow we figure it out anyway. Babies cry, teeth, and test. It's just what they do. We'll all live. They can also fill you with so much joy that your heart just hangs out in your throat, making it hard to breathe. The to-do list is impossibly long. The things to worry about will never cease. Uncertainty is life's only guarantee. But I do have this moment, the wonder when my toddler says a new word, the softness and smell of my baby's skin, the joy and laughter because kids are so unbelievably hilarious. The moment my husband and I look at each other and think this is a glimpse of heaven on earth. I don't want to just physically be in my life. I want to live in it, encompass it, and be present for it, even in stress, fear, and doubt, even in the trenches of hard, back-breaking work. In the Bible, James tells us to consider trials and obstacles to be a blessing. It's the training for our lives, the testing of our faith. Instead of fleeing, I can stay. Live here, learn, expand, and experience life from the mundane to the spectacular with gratitude and awe. The time to start present living starts right now, right after I change this diaper.
This is John Roseman's parenting column from the Journal Star. Dear American parent, hopefully you will recognize yourself. It's high time someone reminded you of the adage, the road to Hades is paved with good intentions. I have watched you from near and far as you have gone about raising your children. You're certainly a well-intentioned person, thus my reference to the above adage. And your kids are cute, reasonably well-behaved, albeit you obviously believe they have no faults, polite, and so on. They are undoubtedly fun to be around, albeit not as fun as you obviously believe they are. You've done a good job, at least from the point of view of a culture that can't seem to see past the end of its collective parenting nose. In other words, if the measure of one's child rearing is how many positive experiences one creates for one's children, you get an A+. But you are not alone in this regard, seem to believe that your job is to create happiness for your kids and minimize, if not eliminate, anything that might cause them the least iota of discomfort. That is not your job. Your job is to prepare emotionally sturdy, self-responsible, respectful future citizens. The proper goal of raising a child in America is to make America a better place. You seem to think that parenting is or should be all about demonstrating love for one's children. And make no mistake about it, children need to know they are loved unconditionally. But proper parenting is also an act of love for one's neighbor. You have obviously lost sight of that, assuming you ever had it in sight. You appear to think your children can do no wrong. That's not true. They are human. Therefore, they are naturally inclined to do self-serving things. When they do self-serving things, they need correction, if not reprimand. But reprimanding one's child is a difficult thing to do when one wants to be liked by said child, which is obviously one of your goals. Is there something missing in your life that you are so dead set on being liked by a child? And while I'm asking you questions, let me ask several more. What is the enduring value to a child of being treated like he is uniquely and amazingly special? Is it reasonable to suppose that the day is coming sooner or later when people will not treat him as if he is UAS, but just an ordinary human like the rest of us? What is likely in store for said child when that day comes? The most difficult thing for a person to come to grips with is the truth about himself, his faults, foibles, and failings. No doubt about it. It is abusive to raise a child such that he believes he is nothing but fault, foible, and failing. But it is abuse of a different sort to raise a child such that he believes he is free of fault, foible, and failing. A very wise person once said that while correction never feels good at the time, it eventually results in all manner of benefit, assuming it is accepted as intended. Likewise, never being corrected eventually results in all manner of detriment. But the detriment is never localized to just the person in question. It boils down to this. Being a good citizen of the world is all about being able to put other people's needs before one's own. The earlier that lesson begins in any given person's life, the better for the whole world. Best regards, John Rosemond.
Comedy, music, drama, ballet, magic, and more are coming to Lincoln's Lead Center next season. Trevor Noah, The Daily Show, Kristen Chenoweth, Jersey Boys, and the B-52s are among the dozens of events scheduled at the Lead Center for Performing Arts beginning this fall. Season ticket packages go on sale at 11 a.m. Thursday. Purchase tickets through the Lead Center at the center box office or online. The lineup is among the venue's strongest in recent seasons. It starts in a big way. The B-52s of Love Shack, Rome, and Rock Lobster fame kick things off on September 30. Noah appears a few days later on October 6th. His latest comedy special, Afraid of the Dark, is available on Netflix. In the special, Noah brings humor to his takes on current events, foreign accents, traffic lights, and lots more. Chenoweth, the Tony and Emmy award-winning actress and singer, is known for originating the role of Glinda in the Broadway musical Wicked. She also appeared in The West Wing and Pushing Daisies on television. Her lead show is November 2. Six-time Tony Award winner Audra McDonald, who portrayed Billie Holiday in Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, will perform April 26. American Ballet Theater and the St. Louis Symphony will present a performance of The Firebird on February 16 and 17. Other highlights are an appearance by innovative jazz group Snarky Pup and a performance by the vocal ensemble group Conspira of the Oratorio, considering Matthew Shepard, based on the true story of a gay University of Wyoming student's brutal murder. Several of the lead offerings are also on Omaha lineups next year. Omaha Performing Arts will bring jazz artist Arturo Sandoval and an a cappella group, Straight No Chaser, to the Holland Center. The Rose Theater will mount a production of the play Seed Folks, and the Omaha Community Playhouse will present its own version of The Mountaintop.
Anything else entertainment-wise?
Well, we got a little Heloise.
Okay, we can
Let's see
take
what
a tip or two.
Let's see what Heloise has to say here. Dear Heloise, you know those perfume samples that come in magazines, the one where you peel back a fold and you can sniff the fragrance? I take those and toss them inside my luggage to keep the inside smelling nice. Signed, Lacey N. of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Dear Heloise, my hint has to do with travel. I save worn out clothing, socks, leggings, and underwear, and pack those as part of my clothing. As those garments become dirty and worn, I simply throw them away. It frees up room in my suitcase for souvenirs. I'm not hauling around dirty, stinky clothes. Best of all, the amount of laundry to be washed when you return is less. Signed, Cynthia S. from Colombe, South Dakota. Dear Heloise, the cost of heating and cooling a home is expensive. To save energy and save money while you're at it, I highly recommend the following. Clean or replace the filters on air conditioners once a month or as recommended by the manufacturer. During the summer, keep curtains and window coverings closed during the warmest part of the day in order to keep the heat at bay. Ceiling fans are less expensive to run than air conditioners, and they keep air moving in the room. Floor fans also are a cost-efficient way to keep the house cooler by forcing air through the house. Signed, Jean D. of Lowell, Massachusetts. And Heloise responds, Jean, it's always a good idea to save energy, and this may become increasingly important in the coming years. Dear Heloise, it's very important to count the rows of seats on a plane from your row to the nearest exit. In case of an emergency, this would prevent a jam at the front of the plane in which only a small number of people could get out in a smoke-filled cabin. This would at least allow you to feel your way out of the plane. Signed, Linda F. of Austin, Texas. Dear Heloise, got an old checkbook cover lying around? You can use it as a coupon organizer and a place to store receipts or business cards. Wendy K., Carson City, Nevada. Heloise responds, Wendy, that's a great tip. Thanks for it. And finally, dear readers, education is an important part of a Japanese person's life, which is why the literacy rate in Japan is almost 100%. In case you are short on time in Paris, a good way to see the attractions is to take a boat ride along the Seine River, because almost all the main sites are on the banks of the river.
We'll turn to the business pages in each of our papers. Yesterday, the Dow Jones Industrials were off 6.43 at 20,951.47. They're up 6.2% or 6.02% year to date. NASDAQ actually rose 2.79 to 6,075.34. It's up 12.9% year to date. And the S&P 500 added 1.39 to 2,389.52, showing a gain of 6.7% year to date. Oil for June delivery was down sharply, about 5%, $2.30 to settle at $45.52. So lower gasoline prices are coming.
Of course, this weekend is the Berkshire Hathaway's shareholders meeting, and there's a thing in the World Herald that shows you what you could have bought with one share of Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock. In 1968, you could have bought 68 Macs from McDonald's because a share was $38. In 1978, with a share price of $158, you could have bought 4 radio tires and a front-end alignment. In 1988, with a share price of $4,700, you could have bought a John Deere disc harrow. In 1998, $70,000 would have bought you a 3-bedroom, 2,000 square foot house in North Omaha. 2008, $96,600. 2 2008 Chevy Tahoe SUVs, well equipped. And in 2017, at a share price of $248,000, 4 years of tuition, books, room and board at Harvard. In business briefs, fewer Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week after 2 weeks of small gains. The Labor Department said weekly jobless claims dropped by 19,000 to 238,000, the lowest level in 3 weeks. The less volatile 4-week average edged up by 750 to 243,000. Overall, 1.96 million Americans are collecting unemployment benefits, down 8.1% from a year ago. Jobless claims are a proxy for layoffs. They have come in below 300,000 for 113 straight weeks, the longest stretch since 1970. The new report adds to evidence that the job market remains healthy, even though the overall economy was growing at a sluggish pace at the start of the year. The jobless rate fell to 4.5% in March, the lowest in nearly a decade. Viacom's second quarter results easily beat Wall Street expectations, but its stock took a beating as investors fear it might lose revenue because a big cable provider moved to make some of the company's prime channels more expensive. Company executives acknowledged Thursday that Charter Communications has re-tiered some of Viacom's highest profile channels, including Comedy Central, MTV, VH1, and BET, into higher priced bundles. The executives suggested they disagree with the changes and were in talks with Charter. They also noted that the re-tiering applied only to new Charter subscribers. Shares in Viacom dropped $2.80 or more than 7% to $36.46 in Thursday's trading.
Cabela's on Thursday reported another disappointing quarter. The Sydney-based outdoors retailer said its first quarter earnings declined nearly 17% compared with a year ago, while total revenue fell more than 3%, and its same-store sales fell nearly 9%. Similar to broader retail industry trends, we continued to experience challenging traffic patterns in the first quarter. Cabela's CEO, Tommy Milner, said in a news release. On a per-share basis, Cabela's earned 28 cents, down from 33 cents in the first quarter of 2016. Adjusted for non-recurring costs, however, earnings were 40 cents a share, which beat analysts' financial estimates of 36 cents. The one bright spot in the earnings report was the financial services division, which includes the world's foremost bank credit card operation based in Lincoln. Revenue in the division was up 6.5% compared with the first quarter of 2016. While we were disappointed with our merchandise sales in the first quarter, we were very pleased with the excellent performance of our Cabela's Club Visa program, Milner said in the news release. It has been the case since it announced plans in October to be acquired by rival Bass Pro Shops. Cabela's declined to comment on the deal. Last month, Cabela's announced a revised agreement with a lower sale price of $61.50 a share, down from an earlier price of $65.50 a share. The company also announced plans to first sell its world's foremost bank assets to Georgia-based Synovus Financial, which plans to keep the deposits and sell the credit card operation to Capital One, which plans to continue operating it from its headquarters in Lincoln. Capital One had originally agreed to buy the bank assets, but ran into regulatory hurdles that were threatening to delay or scuttle the deal. And Deborah Braswell, a university administrator in Alabama, is a member of a dwindling group, people with a landline phone at home. According to a U.S. government study released Thursday, 50.8% of homes and apartments had only cell phone service in the latter half of 2016, the first time such households attained a majority in the survey. Braswell and her family are part of the 45.9% that still have landline phones. The remaining households have no phone service at all. More than 39% of U.S. households, including Braswell's, have both landline and cell phone service. The landline comes in handy when someone misplaces one of the 7 cell phones kicking around her 3-story house in a Birmingham suburb. You walk around your house calling yourself to find it, she says. It's also useful when someone breaks or loses a cell phone and has to wait for a replacement. Renters and younger adults are more likely to have just a cell phone, which researchers attribute to their mobility and comfort with new technology.
It's time now to turn to sports and an article about football. Josh Gable has played professional soccer in Europe, kicked for an indoor football team, and is a talented artist. And despite never playing a down in college, he could add NFL kicker to his resume. The former Kearney High football and soccer standout was invited to a 2-day rookie camp this weekend with the New England Patriots. Gable's distance and accuracy were on the draws, not to mention a series of trick shot kicks that he posted on social media. 80-yard field goals are hard to resist. Even if the Patriots don't keep him, they already have Pro Bowler Steven Gostkowski. Agent Brad Berkowitz is confident Gable will land somewhere. His talent is as good as any NFL kicker in the league, Berkowitz said. Gable kicked for 3 years in high school, earning second-team All-Nebraska and first-team Class A honors, but chose not to play football in college. Instead, he traveled to Italy to play pro soccer. After a few years there and in Belgium, he returned home and to the gridiron. Gable has kicked for the Iowa Barnstormers for the Indoor Football League, where the uprights are half the width of the NFL. He is now with the Nebraska Danger in Grand Island. In late March, he was named the IFL Special Teams Player of the Week after making 2 field goals and all 7 extra point attempts. Berkowitz, who says he's known for finding under-the-radar players, saw Gable's videos, talked to several indoor coaches, and decided to sign him. He's got the 5'11", 185-pound Gable, an invitation to the Spring League, an instructional event in West Virginia in April. It provides an opportunity for players overlooked by the NFL or CFL. Berkowitz said Gable was consistently making 60-yard field goals with ease. Ask him to kick into the wind, and he did so successfully. For the Patriots to want to look at this kid, that's pretty impressive, Berkowitz said. Gable, 26, is unavailable for comment until his Patriot tryout. Berkowitz said Gable is a humble and appreciative kid who can't believe his luck. He's shocked, Berkowitz said. He's like, oh my God, I never thought this would happen.
Some scores in Major League Baseball. It was the Athletics defeating the Twins 8-5. The Rangers beat the Astros 10-4. The White Sox defeated the Royals 8-3. It was the Orioles over the Red Sox 8-3. The Marlins the Marlins lost to the Rays 5-1. Angels and Mariners and Indians and Tigers. Angels and Mariners played late. Indians and Tigers were postponed. In the National League, it was the Reds beating the Pirates 4-2. The Nationals defeated the Diamondbacks by that same score, 4-2. It was the Cubs edging the Phillies 5-4 in 13 innings. The Rockies got by the Padres 3-2 in 11 innings, and the Brewers played a close one with the Cardinals, but won that one 5-4. The Mets and Braves was postponed.
The thought of a Nebraska native riding in Saturday's Kentucky Derby might be hard to believe. Even Channing Hill, who is that Husker, is doing a reality check. I feel honored to be riding in the Derby, he said. There are a lot of jockeys who have as much talent or more than I do who have never gotten the chance. When the starting gate swings open in the most famous of all horse races, 2005 Columbus High graduate Channing Hill will be aboard Fast and Accurate. That colt will be one of 20 seeking eternal glory in the 1.25 mile run for the Roses at the Churchill Downs. It has been a long journey to this point for the 29-year-old Hill, who was born in Grand Island but grew up in Columbus. He is a second-generation rider following in the footsteps of his father, Alan. Alan rode for 33 years and was a fixture on the Nebraska circuit. His son has branched out from the Midwest and ridden primarily in New York, Kentucky, and Arkansas. Channing grew up wanting to be a jockey like his father. He would often ride the couch if it were a horse, and his dad would get after him for it. He got his jockey license the day he turned 16, even before his driver's license. He rode in his first race in 2003 at the Agricultural Park in Columbus. Hill won his first career race the following summer at Prairie Meadows in southern Des Moines. He finished with 21 wins before returning to Columbus High for his senior year. It was at his father's insistence that Hill finish high school before continuing his riding career. Looking back, I'm happy that my dad made me do that, Channing said. I graduated early, but I still needed to grow up some. The young rider, he had Nebraska Kid stitched on his jockey cap, had big dreams following graduation and set off to ride in New York. He rode at Aqueduct and had 49 wins, an astounding total for an apprentice. Horse racing parlance for inexperienced jockey. Because all apprentice riders receive a weight break, Hill continued to gain mounts while earning the trust of trainers. He won 25 races at New York's Belmont Park in 2005 while competing against many of the nation's top riders. Hill kept busy in the fall that he rode at 2 racetracks on the same day. Belmont during the day and Meadowlands in New Jersey at night. He won a career high 135 races that year and finished second in the Eclipse Award voting for top apprentice. Hill's success continued over the years at some of the biggest racetracks in America. He won at least 80 races each year from 2006 until 2010 before his victory totals started to tail off. He rode 54 wins in 2011, 30 in 2012. The hard life of a jockey began to weigh on him, and he said he made some bad decisions away from the racetrack. Fortunately, that was about the time he met trainer Wayne Catalano's daughter, Shelby. The two began dating and eventually married. I'm still a jockey because of her, Channing said. She got me through some of the madness. Hill bounced back from his 30-win season to win 92 in 2013. He won 216 over the next 3 years until that success and his racing connections helped lead to his Mount Saturday in the Kentucky Derby. Fast and Accurate earned his trip to Churchill Downs after winning the Spiral Stakes on March 25 at Kentucky's Turfway Park. Hill was not aboard the colt that day, but rode runner-up Blue Ridge Traveler. When Fast and Accurate jockey Tyler Gaffalone opted to ride a colt named Patch in the Derby, Fast and Accurate owner Kendall Hansen and trainer Mike Maker turned to Hill. He had ridden the colt to victory in a maiden race 5 months earlier. I have to thank them for giving me this chance, Hill said. It's the dream of every jockey to ride in the Kentucky Derby, and my dream is about to come true. After learning of the mount, Channing didn't waste time calling his dad back in Columbus. I think I was more excited than he was, Alan Hill said. He's worked hard over the years, and he's definitely earned that shot. Alan said his Derby excitement stems from his own racing experience. I always wanted to ride in the Derby, but I never got that opportunity, he said. Watching Channing on Saturday, it will be like I'm riding in it. A few days before hearing the traditional playing of My Old Kentucky Home, the Channing Hill family, the couple has a 3-year-old son and are expecting another boy, has been busy moving into its new Kentucky home. While unpacking boxes, Hill received a reminder of his Columbus High roots. "I found my old varsity wrestling jacket," he said, "and it still fits." Hill appeared to be a good fit for Fast and Accurate, though the Gray Colt will be at long odds Saturday. But that does not deter the Husker jockey, who has won more than 1,100 or 1,000 races and waited years for this chance. "I feel like I'm riding for my family, but it's more than just that," Channing said. "I'm riding for all the people who have helped me get to this point." He also knows that the eyes of Nebraska will be on him. "I'll be carrying the flag for the whole state," he said, "and I hope I can plant it in the winner's circle."
When all the medals had been doled out at the Heartland Athletic Conference tournament, there was only one man left at the Lincoln Southwest table. The Silverhawks coach, Jim Danson, was beaming with pride. It was a banner day for Southwest, with 5 golfers finishing in the top 15 and taking first place with a combined team score of 299 on Thursday at Holmes Golf Course. The impressive final beat out second place Lincoln East by 9 strokes. "I think all of them will tell you that individual medals are great, but the big goal is a championship," Danson said. It really always has been. The individual accolades are important, but if no one medals and the team wins, when it's still a great day. But today's performance with all the medals is just icing on the cake. It was a top to bottom performance for the Silverhawks, but Nate Bonce and Trevor Bosinger stole the show. Bonce and Bosinger both shot 35s on the front, but Bonce narrowly edged his teammate 38 to 39 on the back to take first place with a 1 over par 73, while Bosinger finished second to give the Silverhawks a 1-2 finish. "My putting really helped me out today," Bonce said. "I'm really happy with my performance, but more proud of our team's performance. I think it's the first time this year that we've all medaled. It really helps to have some momentum going into districts and state."
In NHL playoff news, Oscar Lindberg scored 2 goals. Henrik Lundqvist made 22 saves, and the New York Rangers beat the Ottawa Senators 4-1 on Thursday night to tie their Eastern Conference semifinal series at 2 games apiece. Chris Kreider and Nick Holden also scored, and Tanner Glass added 2 assists for the Rangers, who have won 4 consecutive home games this season. Kyle Turris scored for Ottawa, and Craig Anderson made 17 saves before being replaced by Mike Condon for the 3rd period. Condon finished with 9 stops. Senators star defenseman Erik Karlsson also left the game after the 2nd period with an injury. Karlsson played during the 1st round with 2 microfractures in one of his feet from blocking a shot late in the regular season. Lundqvist had stopped 48 of his past 50 shots after allowing 6 goals in the Senators' double overtime win in Game 2. Lindberg scored both of the Rangers' 2nd period goals. Glass playing his 2nd consecutive game, blocked Ben Harper's shot, and Michael Grabner grabbed the loose puck and broke in with Lindberg, who scored on a one-timer at 2:01. Glass also helped set up Lindberg's next goal. He outworked Senators defensive Cody Ceci for the puck behind the Ottawa net and sent it to the boards. JT Miller grabbed the loose puck and passed to Lindberg at the point for a 3-0 lead at 15:54. Lindberg also scored the Rangers' final goal of their Game 3 win. Kreider made it a 4-0 with a power play goal at 10:45. In the 3rd, Turris scored at 13:34, but the Senators had trouble generating sustained pressure against Lundqvist and were sloppy with the puck at times. For the second consecutive game, the Rangers controlled the 1st period. In Game 3, they scored the first two goals on outshot Ottawa 15-5. On Thursday, they outshot the Senators 11-7 and opened the scoring again. Holden led a breakout from the defensive zone and sent a pass to Kevin Hayes at center ice. Hayes passed back to Holden along the left wing, and he broke in toward the net and beat Anderson with a wrist shot that went over his right pad at 14:04. In Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Penguins captain Sidney Crosby is skating again, but Coach Mike Sullivan provided no update on when his star will be ready to return from a concussion.
In NBA playoff action, John Wall scored 24 points. Isaiah Thomas was held to 13, and the Washington Wizards jumped out to a hot start and rode it to a 116-89 victory over the Celtics in a technical foul-filled Game 3 on Thursday night to cut their series deficit to 2-1. The Wizards used a 22-0 first quarter run to take a 34-12 lead as Thomas and the Celtics kept missing shots and turning the ball over. The game was already a blowout in the second when Washington's Kelly Oubre Jr. was ejected for charging and knocking over Kelly Olynyk after the Boston big man was called for an illegal screen. There were 8 technical fouls and 3 ejections in that game. In NBA playoff action, Cleveland leads Toronto 2-0. They have a game tonight at 6 and Sunday at 2:30, both games in Toronto. And if necessary, their next one following Sunday will be Tuesday back at Cleveland. Washington in Boston. Boston now has a 2-1 lead, with Washington getting kind of back in the action with the win yesterday. In the Western Conference, Houston and San Antonio are tied with 1 each. Friday, the Spurs are playing at the Rockets at 8:30 tonight, and they play again on Sunday. Golden State and Utah played last night, but that game was late, so I don't have a score. Golden State is currently up by 1, and their next game will be Saturday at Utah at 7:30 p.m., then Monday at Utah at 8 p.m. It is now top of the hour, so time for us to make way for Community Connections on the Radio Talking Book Network. I'm Ralph Morocco. It's been my pleasure to be with you today. Good afternoon.
And this is Bob Gotting. It's been my pleasure to be with you and read. We'll talk to you next week and have a great weekend. Sounds like it's going to be a nice one.
Thank you very much. Hello there, how are you?
Oh, hi, Jane.
Good.
Hi, Jane.
You guys can actually sit up there.
Okay.
We're going to I have to get a
I feel
different.
right-handed.
Oh, well, that could be.
You feel left-handed, right?
Yep, probably so. Jeez.
I don't know if we're gonna be on headsets or not.
Doesn't look like it.
Is she gonna come in here?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, she's got notes over here.
Mhm.
All right, I just gotta get this thing on. That's the thing, interesting thing. We have a new soundboard in our,
Do you need to be here?
nope,
Okay.
no, I got this.
Okay.
We normally can put a third microphone in there, but we don't have everything completely done
With your new
with the
equipment.
new equipment, and so we're a portable thingy.
Just, I've had a thing in my throat, so I'm hoping I don't.
Well, if you do, just, I mean, if you, well, and if you have to, get up and leave or
Okay.
something, that's
Yeah, okay.
fine. But we'll just have to carry the load.
That's quite all
Hello,
right, you can do that.
the load, I don't know.
can you ask Becca? Sybil's not
Sure.
here.
Here, maybe I can help you.
Okay.
Oh, Ralph can help you,
Maybe.
All right.
maybe.
Let me know when you feel ready.
I feel ready.
Okay, do you want me just to leave the door open or close it?
I'll close it because Ralph's across the way,
Okay.
and you'll wave at us
I'll
when
wave,
it's ready.
Yeah,
Okay,
it'll be about 30 seconds. I can just fade the music.
okay. And then if you can't, I don't know, make sure, I guess I've got this on, so hopefully you can hear me
Oh, I'll be able to hear you. If I can't, I'll come
running
physically.
on fire.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's Paul. Did you meet him last time you were
Yes,
in?
we did.
Yes, he's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, yes.
So this is just very casual, very easy.
All right.
And you can adjust that microphone. However, you can move it up, down.
How close do we need to be?
It doesn't matter.
It's gonna-
Paul will actually adjust it.
Okay, all right. Very good.
So, and I did send you the outline so you knew.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's, okay, he's talking, so he must be getting ready to announce us.
This is live, huh?
We are now live. So thank you very much for joining us. Happy Friday to our listeners. It is the beginning of May and we've had lots of rain, so hopefully now all your flowers are blooming. This is Jane Nielsen with Radio Talking Book Service. And today for Community Conversations, we have a couple in. It's Bud and Jane Thompson. And they are with Keller Williams, and we're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very
And
much.
Cinco de Mayo.
That's right. And Berkshire Hathaway, Berkeyville
Yes.
this weekend as well. We've got Chamber of Commerce weather, so
Mhm.
that's good for our visitors. They'll all want to move here,
Sure.
Wonderful.
and then they'll buy lots of houses.
Then they can look us up, you bet.
That'd be a good thing. Okay, well, first off, tell us a little bit about yourselves. We are in the living rooms of our listeners, the blind and visually impaired and folks that have trouble reading. So I like to let them know who's visiting with them today in their living room. Go ahead, Jane.
All right. I was born, both Bud and I were born in Beatrice,
Hmm.
Nebraska. We're both native Nebraskans and were raised in that area. I was actually from a small town in the surrounding area. And Bud and I actually went to high school together.
Oh,
So we've been together for a long, long time.
so high school sweethearts.
Yes, we were.
Nice. My hubby and I were too.
And we've been married 46 years, 10 months, 1 day, and 2 hours.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? And we have the old joke about the 50-year probationary period. If she makes it 3 more years, I'll probably keep her.
And I bet you'll have a big celebration.
We have our 2 kids. Did you mention that?
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah, 1 kid's in Bennington, our son, and with his wife and kids, and son and daughter, and our daughter and her husband live in Papillion with their 2 sons and daughter. Our oldest granddaughter is a freshman this year at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln
Oh, my.
in journalism.
Mm.
So we may have to, is this recorded? Can we play it back
Yes, you'll be able to. I can
for our
send you.
granddaughter?
I can send you a WAV file, and it actually will be repeated this evening at 6 o'clock
Oh, is that right?
on the radio station, so you guys can tune in on the internet.
We want to make our granddaughter proud of us.
There you go. I'm sure she is.
So, let's see.
You guys
and-
were born and raised in Beatrice. Did you go to college then here, or?
Went to University of Nebraska.
Mhm. Jane went in teaching.
I was in teaching college. I ended up not doing that as a profession, but I went through the business education at that time. Since then, that particular major, I'm sure, has changed quite a bit in versus to what I actually went through and studied at the time.
Mhm.
I went through engineering college, graduated, what was it, about 2 years after you graduated,
Yeah.
and got a bachelor's in construction engineering, construction management.
Mm.
And then we spent a long time booming around doing construction. I spent years in the construction field in engineering and project management. And Jane faithfully with the kids followed us around. We moved in 1 decade, we moved 10 times in 10 years,
Oh, my goodness.
including some time in Texas, Illinois, Iowa, Pennsylvania,
California, and Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
that was in one decade. And then we settled back here in 1985, 84,
85.
85.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Were you in the military, Bud?
No, it
No?
was all
It was
construction.
all construction.
Right. Yeah.
And Jane, did you live in Saudi Arabia then?
For a very short time. We were actually supposed to be there for a 5-year minimum. However, once the kids and I finally got over there, Bud had been over there about 4 months or so ahead of us, things changed in the corporate world drastically. And within about another month or two, they decided that at that time, all the Americans on that work site, and even those who had been there much longer than we were going to be, were all to come home.
Oh,
And so it kind of, it was kind of a house of cards at the time. Everything just kind of tumbled. There were, of course, people there from Europe that went on to live there for a while, but the Americans at that time were sent back.
did it have anything to do? Was there unrest in the country or?
It was really an economic slump.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it was happening in the Middle East, but the corporate fathers in the headquarters at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania hadn't been dialed into it yet. The guys in the field knew it, that things were slowing down. That's usually the way it is. The people in the trenches know it before the people in the corporate offices,
Sure.
in the boardrooms. So, when we arrived, people were saying, we don't know why they sent you over because we're all running out of work here. But we stayed. I think I was there 6 months. You were there a couple, 2 months, 3 months.
About 2 months,
Yeah.
which actually doesn't seem like a long time at all. But there, we have so many vivid memories, and we did a lot in that 2-month period. The children were in an they called it American school, but it actually was a school that had many Europeans, South Africans. It was very interesting. I got a part-time job regarding music at that school. And we did some side trips, and it was just very interesting. But yet it was a time too that we were ready to come back to the States.
Sure. Was this in the 80s then? Or
It was 1984-ish.
1984.
I think in 83, I was traveling a lot to the Middle East.
Yes.
84, we made the move. By the end of 84, we were back. And actually, we landed in El Centro, California, and I was commuting across the border into Mexico, working in a Mexican kind of an evaluation of whether we'd put a factory there or not.
Oh.
We decided not to put a factory there. So on our orders to head back to Pittsburgh, we decided to come home back to Nebraska. And we did that in 85.
Yes.
Yeah, February 85.
Yes.
Went from San Diego, California to Omaha in February.
The
Yes.
perfect time to move to
It was beautiful.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Actually, it was. It was very good. But the day we left El Centro, it was February 14th. I vividly remember that. And the time and temperature said it was 95 degrees. That was in February
Wow.
in Southern California. But we were fortunate when we got here too that I think there had been quite a heavy winter. But by the time we got here, it was the weather was straightening out, and it was actually everything went well from there.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Very interesting. I would love to travel over there and see the culture and
It was
experience.
It
the
was
culture,
it was
I
an
should
experience.
say.
Yes, there were some very, very interesting things that we learned.
Sure. And we found out really people are people everywhere.
That's
Okay.
right.
It doesn't matter
No.
No.
what their religion or culture is. They have the same values. I remember sitting on the floor of one Arab's apartment with his wife and kids, and they put out newspapers on the carpet, and we had a pile of rice and stuff we ate,
Yes, yes,
and on the living room floor.
yeah.
On
You know,
newspaper,
it was
yeah.
their culture.
And
And we had Tang, right? Wasn't that
I
what they were
believe
drinking?
so.
Tang?
I believe so. And
Yeah.
and the children playing in the streets and all. It was very interesting, and we have some very good memories.
And we look back at that and we think, I hope those guys all made it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
25 years, 30 years later,
Sure.
35.
How old were your children when you were there?
Our daughter turned 13 when we were there. So when we got back, she was in 7th grade, and our son was in 3rd grade.
So they remember then too. They have experiences. they
Right. Well, we
remember.
remember the birthday because we, of course, had chosen certain things to move, and her birthday came at the end of September, and we had no way of having candles on a cake.
Mm.
And when you're 13, you need candles on a cake, and so we lit 13 matches quickly to be on a birthday cake.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, that's very interesting. You've had some good experiences then, and lived all over. What made you get interested in what you're doing now?
Well, to go from construction to real estate, that was, something I always wanted to do. And I got into the late night, midnight, no money down infomercial shows that would be on the middle of the night, and signed up, took some of their courses, some of the training, and started buying rental houses here in town.
Okay.
And then I was encouraged by a friend of ours that works for the local railroad here to get a license and save on the commission, and
Sure.
instead of paying out the real estate commission, keep it for myself. So I started taking classes at Randall School of Real Estate for fun and escape, because I was managing about 125 people or so
Possibly.
here in
Yes.
town, and it was a great escape to go take real estate courses. So we kept buying rentals and took the courses. And then in 2005, I lost my job, but by that time I had a broker's real estate license. So the next morning I went to work as a real estate agent, and we did that for about 10 years. And at about the time I reached the age of 65, it started to soak in that I was competing with kids half my age to sell houses for kids half my age to other kids half my age.
Mhm.
And we're with Keller Williams. Keller Williams is the largest real estate company in the world.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, not that big yet here in Omaha, but gaining quickly. But they offered a course called the Baby Boomer Real Estate course.
Mhm.
And I thought, you know what, that fits. At my age, nobody really wants to have grandpa show them a house,
Mhm.
but people our
Unless
age.
it's their grandpa.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they trust their grandpa. But people our age were facing challenges and transitions and life events that happen maybe once or twice in their life.
That's true.
And baby boomer listings. Baby boomers are defined as anyone born after World War II, and of course we were in 1950, and then it goes, I think, to 1965-ish. But there's like 77 million Americans
Mhm.
that are in this category, and they're either dealing with possibly making a transition in their lifestyle from I call it the big 2-story walkout basement 3-car,
Mhm.
to some sort of ranch. I've had one knee operation. Everybody's had one or two, and you don't want the stairways anymore. So you need to make that transition. And a lot of times people our age are dealing with the loss of a parent
Sure.
or a close friend. And we've been through it. Jane's lost both her stepdad, her dad, and her mother, and I've lost my father. And with this course that we were taking about baby boomer listings, it was how to help people that don't know where to turn. How do you navigate through this whole process? We're not attorneys, although actually now, after doing this for a few years, my best clients are the attorneys. They'll refer a lot of people to us who need help, but they need help navigating through this process. Where do you start? This house we've been accumulating stuff in this house for 20 years. As a matter of fact, we've been through that. We came to Omaha. We were out of town for a little bit with the same company and back in town. But when we were out of town, we built an acreage, and I had a 30 by 45 foot building full of stuff.
Mm.
We moved back into Millard into a standard house with a 2-car garage. What do you do with all that stuff?
Mhm.
So over the last few years, it's been a focus on that. How do you help people who are not knowing where to start? We work like concierges in a way, or project managers. I spent 30 some years as a project manager, managing something or some group of people. It's how do I manage subcontractors and vendors to help these people get through the process? We don't do the contracting ourselves, but we do a lot of connecting.
Mhm.
And we'll sit down with someone who needs to empty out mom's house or something. And it's almost like a side hobby of ours. We go to estate sales almost every weekend.
Oh,
And what we're doing is we're kind of like silent shoppers. We're really interviewing the companies who are out there that are doing estate sales. How do they treat the people that are walking through? How do they advertise?
Mhm.
And we've been through over a dozen of them and gotten familiar with those, at least a dozen different estate sale people. And now if somebody doesn't know where to turn, we can say, okay, I recommend, I'll show them a list of a dozen. And I'll say, I recommend maybe for what you have here, vendor A or vendor B. And if you want to, I'll sit here and help you interview them. I'll help you go through the fine print of their agreement, because they have a contract
Sure.
that they were going to perform to and how they're going to get paid. I'll help you go through that. Been through contracts for 30 some years, 40 years. So that's what we do, is we just try to help them wherever they want it. All those services are free. We don't charge for those. All we're doing is we're differentiating ourselves in a specialty, so that, not like, what are there, 3,000 some 2,500 real estate agents, I think, right now in Omaha. And there's probably only maybe a handful that do what we're doing. But we want to differentiate ourselves and offer services and help to people, besides just putting a sign on the ground and putting their house on the MLS and taking some photographs and waiting for a buyer to come. So that's what we do.
and I imagine there's, in some cases, a family may have children that can help them with that process, or siblings that can help them. But there's also there's probably a lot of people that don't have family or somebody that could help them with that. So you guys can step in, plus you're objective. So
Yes.
you don't have the memories and the sentimentality for the folks. It's hard to do.
That is very hard.
It's kind of a yin yang thing for us. Like I said, my background is out of construction and engineering, and Jane's his mother and teacher and assistant to people. And so she's the one who is empathetic. I have to shut up and be careful when we get to that, where we're talking about somebody's memories, and that's where she takes over that part and connects with the survivors or the family or the person that's moving into a community somewhere.
In most cases, when you're helping people, do you have a time frame, or is it often people are in a hurry? They've had an event that has caused them to look at this. Okay, we have to do this right now. Or in some cases, is there enough time? They come and they think, we're thinking about in 6 months, mom's going to move. Do you have some of both?
Some of both.
Yeah.
Sometimes exactly that, it's like, perhaps we need to start thinking about this. And then other times it's like, it becomes more imperative. It can vary from exactly like that.
Both those options.
Right.
You remember that old TV show Dragnet?
Oh, yes.
And how did it start? This is the city. There are a million stories here, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that too, because every person is different and their emotions are different. And we have to be very sensitive to what those emotions are and then what their time frame is. There's been cases here in town where someone may contact us a year ago, and now a year later, they're ready to move on. And it's totally up to them. Some are ready to go and make the transition into an assisted living community, or if it's survivors in an estate, they're ready to go right now. But you never know. So we just try to keep in touch with people, and when they're ready to do something, if they need a little help here and there,
Do you get involved with family discussions or family arguments over what's going to happen?
One of the first things we do is we do meet with the family, or actually if it's involving a trust or an estate, with the personal representative. That is the first thing. But after that, we will keep them apprised of anything. If they have information, we try to let all parties know, including an attorney, if there's an attorney regarding a trust or anything.
Mhm.
But as far as any disagreements that the family has, they need to work that out pretty much themselves. We don't try to enter into that. We try to find out who is the final decision maker.
Mhm.
But that sometimes can be what holds something up.
Mhm.
Perhaps we need to, have a little more time for the families to come to a final decision, or exactly how they're going to handle something if there's a major decision involved.
Mhm.
Otherwise, but that is one of the first things we do, is that we do meet with the family to see what type of services that it looks like they may need.
And you don't often then get drawn into a family disagreement or.
Sometimes people will ask me about decorating a house, and I'll say, do I look like an interior decorator? I'm not, but I know one, and we have them come help. In this case, we know, you and I both know mediators
Sure.
that are professionals in what they do.
Right.
And we know attorneys, we know mediators, we know who to ask to come help.
Mhm.
And I think the smart thing is know when you're not qualified to give an answer and get somebody that is.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's good. What other types of people or companies do you recommend during this whole process? Who else might need to be brought in?
I think one of the first things that comes up is, should the house be sold as is,
Mhm.
or should we be fixing it up? I'm going through that right now. I got a call from South Carolina the other day for a house here in town. And I've visited the house twice this week down in the Exarban area. Great potential.
Sure.
And a nice 2-bedroom, 1-car garage, 1-bath house that will just get gobbled up in a hurry. Either way,
Mhm.
whether you fix it up or not. But then I end up reverting back to my old construction engineering background. I spend more time in the basement really than in the house. So I'm looking at things like, how's the foundation, how's the structure?
Mhm.
And in that case, I'll end up recommending that they sell it as is. And in these situations, the state law doesn't require that you declare everything you know about the house, because they never lived in it, right? Or the kids haven't lived in it in
Mhm.
15, 20 years. So just make it available for people to inspect and look at as they wish, and then make that decision, sold as is or bring in contractors.
Mhm.
Another example is we did one out around 168th and Q in Hawthorne neighborhood, which was a $400 and some thousand house. You don't sell $400,000 fixer-uppers, So in that case, we brought in a contractor who was, carpet layers, interior decorators, painters, and the family was in Mississippi.
Mm.
Hadn't seen this house in years.
Wow.
So we took care of all that. We had people come in to deal with the family on how all the things that were in the house, which parts they want sent to them,
Mhm.
and which parts they wanted donated, and which parts went into a consignment sales store here in the area.
Mhm.
So all those people come into play, but so much of it depends. So there's a wide variety. I have a notebook about an inch thick of all these people, depending on who
Who you need
probably would come in. I've got another one right now that there's indications of mold in the basement,
Oh,
and there are professional people, licensed and certified, that can go in and mitigate that mold and find it. It's
Mhm.
fun to watch. Me as an engineering guy, I like to watch them walk around with their video scopes, and they're pointing lasers at the ceiling of the basement, finding these spots that are wet,
uh-huh.
and then digging in to see what it's going to take to mitigate it legally
Mhm.
to the requirements of the law.
Oh, sure.
So it goes on and on
Yeah.
until it's ready.
And so in cases like that you were just talking about, those two, so the families may not ever even come look at the property? You'll just do it all and they'll.
The 400,000 and the people in Mississippi had 8 years and hadn't seen it. I think it's over 6 years since they had seen this $400,000 house with a pool and a jacuzzi in the backyard. Beautiful home.
Yeah.
So we put well, and I'll bring it up, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but they actually the tenants hadn't even alerted them that they had a massive hailstorm through that house.
Oh,
And they missed the window of time to get the new roof.
oh,
So it also took a $20,000 roof, plus $20,000 for the carpet and paint and
mhm.
interior decorator, keeping an eye on the other guys. And so that was the situation in that case. Hadn't seen it in 6 years. Some of our best, not best, but some of the thank you notes, and I get more thank you notes in this business than in normal real estate. And I get them from people who a lady from Tampa, people from Ohio, Texas, that have relatives, and they become the personal representative or the executor here in town.
Mhm.
But they haven't seen the house, and they're really caught. You know, Jane just went through that with her brother and her parents' house, and that was 100 miles away. And that was far enough away to be an issue, but we know people that are coming here from Colorado or
Mhm.
and trying to handle this, and it's like we can take care of it for them.
It's very interesting, very interesting. So what other kinds of things would you suggest or mention to folks that were thinking about doing this? Where would they start, other than calling you? I mean, are there things they have to do before they call you?
Mhm.
Ducks in a row?
Yeah, ducks in a row. Well, a lot of it, of course, is, and the first thing is, which is a lot of times the paralyzing issue,
Mhm.
is how do we get rid of this?
Mm.
Actually, even we are going through kind of an issue like this ourselves. It's like, and you mentioned it earlier, what are the sentimental things? And I guess you start in that area, I believe. What is the things I can throw away or donate
Mhm.
versus the things right now that are still important to me, still have a value to me, things that I need. And I think at that point, I've kind of made a self-conscious vow to myself even that every week I've got to throw away one thing. I'm not a real buyer, so I don't buy up stuff.
Mhm.
But I kind of made it just in my own home. It's gotten to the point. I've been busy for several years away from the home, back in the home now, and working with Bud on this particular thing. And it's like, it's time for me to look at this because I'm seeing what other people's are
Right.
doing. Plus, in my own case with my mother's property, it became necessary for my brother and I to go through the house
Mhm.
and to make these certain decisions as well. And that's probably the first thing. If people know and they have the time to, if they know that there's a transition coming, or even just to make themselves feel lighter, I feel like a lot of times people get rid of our extraneous things. All the organizers that we're reading about and all the organizers that I know,
Mhm.
it's this is weight around your neck. You may not realize it, but once it's gone, you're not probably going to miss it as much as you might think. And so some of those decisions, but start with the simple decisions. Start with the things that oh, jeepers, that's broken. Why do I even keep the parts together? If I've been waiting for 2 years to buy the glue that's going to hold that together, maybe I just really don't need this anymore.
Or you're waiting for me to fix it.
Or I'm waiting for my husband to fix it. Exactly. So, go with the simple decisions first. If you see that there's a transition coming down the road or something that you're thinking, okay, I can live this streamlined life a little easier, then maybe some of the next things are maybe not just the extraneous things in the cupboards and the closets, but maybe then, you can look at other things in your home that maybe are a little more bulkier, and those things, starting to make those decisions. And then you'll probably realize that maybe it is time to downsize.
Mhm.
And maybe that isn't such a frightening idea.
I actually did that this Lent. I had read it somewhere before to actually try to get rid of one thing every day. And I did. And it was really pretty painless because we all just hang on to some things or clothing or things that you know they're there and you're just waiting to find the right person.
Right.
And in my case, there were certain things that I had somebody in mind to give them to. So I just made a point of doing that. And then I had my sack and my box for Goodwill and did that. And my thing is books. I have a lot of books and I love books, but I've actually been able to cull that a little bit and gave away a few books that I could bear to part with. And so, yeah, I know what you mean. What about things that people, they maybe don't want it anymore, but they know it has some value. So they maybe don't want to donate it.
It happens in this first visit or second visit that we'll kind of evaluate what the values are. Of course, everybody thinks their stuff is very valuable.
That's true too, yeah.
But we had one last fall, and the whole lower level of a walkout house was a retired man's hobby turned business, and it was a baseball card business.
Oh.
And we took, between the personal representative and myself, we took a guess. There was probably $250,000 worth of baseball cards and things, and ball bats and shirts by Tiger Woods, autographed, and Muhammad Ali, all sorts of beautiful things. That took a few extra months. They had in that business, they had people all over the United States that they could refer to. They were friends of their dad, and that they helped sell that stuff. Then again, when it came time to select an estate sale company, there's different people that specialize in different things. Some are seriously into antiques, some of the estate sale people, some are into collectibles. We found a good one that was that could recognize the value and take the time. Some of these estate sales companies will take, well, in this case, it took 3 weeks to prepare for the sale. And that included, they were constantly on the internet getting a rough idea of the value of some of these cards and things, and autographed shirts. So it depends on what's in the house. I hate to say it depends, but you have to, it depends on what's in there. If it's a collectible sort of a thing, if it's weapons, that's a whole different group of vendors that I can go to that, I can trust that will come in and give fair value for them.
Well, and when you're selling something too, I think of a couple of items my mother-in-law had and this was when they still had internet access and a computer, and she had looked them up online, and they were out there on eBay or something at a certain value. So she thought she'd be able to take hers to like the antique dealer in Walnut, Iowa, and get that amount of money. And when she did that and found out she couldn't, she didn't understand, well, online it says it's worth, $450, and this guy in Walnut wants to give me $50.
Yes.
So there's that aspect. If you don't do that type of thing, you're not going to understand or know. So I'm sure you can explain that to people too.
Sure, and the pros know that they have to have it at a price that the collectors will come in. I don't know if you have a chance to do this, but going to an estate sale on the opening morning of a Thursday or a Friday when they open for the first day.
I have not done that.
That is a kick. In the case of this one that had the baseball cards, and actually she had a Hummel collection also. I took photographs of people lined up from the door out to the street and down the sidewalk on the opening morning. And these were the pros. These were the ones that were going to go through. You see this if you go to the opening mornings of these estate sales. The toy collectors, all the special collection type people.
Stamp collectors.
Stamp collectors, you bet. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So I don't know where I was going to go with that, but there's that are wanting those specific things, but they have to buy them at a price that they can handle them. The carrying cost, and put them back in their